Today, I'm excited to have Nina Amir with us today. Amir is the Inspiration to Creation coach. She helps creative people combine their passion and purpose so they move from idea to inspired action and achieve more inspired results. Possibly best known as an author coach, book editor, and blog coach, Nina is an 11-time Amazon bestselling author, international speaker, and award winning blogger. As a hybrid author, she has published 20 books, some traditionally and others independently. She created a proprietary author training program for aspiring authors and other coaches. Additionally, she founded the Nonfiction Writers University, a national nonfiction writing month. Nina has been interested and involved in personal development for 3 decades. As one of the only 300 elite certified high performance coaches in the world, she supports writers as they move toward achieving their potential and fulfilling their purpose so they can make a positive and meaningful impact in the world with their words, which sounds awesome. So thanks for being here, Nina.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for asking me.
Oh yes, I'm just so excited about what you're doing. I mean, we all need inspiration to get our creative work done. So it's just such a wonderful thing that you're doing to help writers.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, if you don't mind, would you just can we just start by maybe sharing your story on what inspired you to become a writer and kind of what led you to start writing and then coaching other writers?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So, I was one of those typical kids who loved reading, read under the covers with the flashlight and all those kinds of things, and primarily read fiction. And by the time I hit high school, I decided I wanted to become a novelist. But my mother was very practical. And she said, when I told her, Mom, I want to be a novelist, that's going to be my career, she said, well, only really good writers can make a living as a novelist, which probably is true to some extent. But, of course, part of me said, well, maybe I'm not that good a writer. The other part said, well, I really want to write, and I actually know that I'm a good writer. And so I took a course in journalism in high school from a very charismatic teacher and discovered that journalism was a way that I could actually earn a small living.
Yeah.
It's not the most well-paid profession, but, I could earn a living as a journalist and as a magazine journalist. So that's what I did. I went to college. I got a degree in magazine journalism. And when I came out, I worked for a variety of different regional publications, and then I worked for a corporation in New York, and then I started doing sort of full-time freelance work for some publications. And anyway, eventually somebody asked me if I could edit a book for them. And I thought about it, and I said, well, actually, I remember my professor telling me that as a magazine journalist, I could write a book because a nonfiction book is, as he described it, is just a series of articles all on the same topic, right? Every chapter is like an article. And so I thought, well, I've been editing for magazines, I've been writing for magazines, I should be able to edit a book because it's just this series of articles all put together. And so I did. And the second book that I edited for someone was called Enlightened Leadership. It went on to sell over 300,000 copies. It's still in print today. I did another one not long after that went on to sell well over 100,000 copies. And now it's probably more like 200,000 copies. It was self-published, but it won a big Writer's Digest award. And anyway, went on to be published traditionally as well. So I had these kind of successes, and I started to work with some authors on their books. But what I discovered was that I actually wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And so I decided to do that. And I learned how to write a book proposal. I wanted to be traditionally published. And so I studied that, and I wrote a proposal. And of course, I sent this proposal out to to the big agents in New York, because who doesn't want to be published by them, or be represented by them and be published by a big traditional publishing house.
Yeah.
And I very quickly got a phone call from one of the literary agents who said, I love your book. I love the title. I love your writing. You wrote a fabulous book proposal. It was like everything she loved. And then came that word no one wants to hear. And in those days, platform was a new thing, author platform. And I'd never heard of it, despite the fact that I had really studied up on this and I was already blogging on the topic. And anyway, blogging a little. I think I had started my blog by then. Anyway, she said, nobody knows who you are, and therefore you need to build a platform. that's what platform is. People have to know who you are, and then they buy your books.
Yeah.
And she sent me off to a small publishing house, and that they called me also. The publisher called me, told me all the same things, but didn't take the book because I had no platform. And so I set out to build a platform. I started blogging, and I became a pretty prolific blogger and an expert along the way on nonfiction and on blogging primarily, but also on personal development and spirituality. And eventually, I got an agent. Actually, I've had quite a number of agents, but I got an agent. Didn't get a book deal, and then at a certain point, it was about 8 years into this, I realized that I'd been working on this platform. I had a couple agents, no sold books, and I thought maybe I should just quit. This is just too hard. It's taking too long. And then I looked at everything I'd already built to date. I had self-published some short books. I mostly just to get out as a speaker. I had these blogs that were working, and I thought, I've just come too far. I've just come too far. I refuse to quit. And that changed my mindset totally. And I embraced everything I had to do. And 4 years later, I held my first book, How to Blog a Book, in my hands. And so in half the time, I actually got published traditionally. And, since then, I've had 2 other traditionally published books. Creative Visualization for Writers is the new one. The Author Training Manual was in between there. And as you mentioned, I've got a bunch of ebooks and other books, that I self-published. And so now I spend my time, writing and blogging and coaching other writers to help them shorten their learning curve because, it was a long learning curve for me. And I would really like to help, as you said, to help writers make a positive and meaningful difference with their words. And so I see that it's in the coaching that I can make a really big difference. Although, I have coaching programs and other things, but, and also through my books, which all are meant for that same purpose. Yeah. So that's my story.
That's awesome. Wow. And that sounds like that was, a turning point for you when you sort of, decided I refuse to quit.
It was a huge turning point. And I know we're going to talk a lot about, mastering your mind and those sort of things, but that really was it. It was, up until that point, I had been building platform because I had to. Yeah. Just because, I was told I have to do this. And self-publishing too. I was doing it just because I needed books to say I was an author, to say I, could speak and all this stuff. And at that point, really what happened for me was I embraced everything. I really wrapped my arms around everything I had to do. And then it all went much faster because my whole mindset shifted. Everything I was doing was in order to help me get where I wanted to go, to do what I wanted to do, to fulfill my purpose and my potential. And when you start seeing it as that, you're connected to it. Yeah. And it goes a lot faster.
As I've read your blogs, your many blogs, it's wonderful. There's so much great information that is so helpful for writers, and also on becoming a high performance writer. So I thought maybe we could focus a bit today on how writers can achieve their writing goals. What are some of the most common roadblocks that most writers face when it comes to writing and finishing their books?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm actually a certified high performance coach who works with writers a lot of the time because that happens to be my market. That's where I've been playing most of the time. And I work with them individually, one-on-one, and in groups. And what I see in terms of roadblocks is mostly it's self-esteem issues, low self-esteem. I think, the thoughts that are running through their heads is, I think I can't do it. I'm not good enough. No one will want to read what I write. I'm going to be judged. And it's a mindset issue, kind of like I was talking about. It's a mindset issue. They're focused on the negative thoughts and the limiting beliefs that go on in their head. And that's really the biggest roadblock. I always say, when people come to me and talk about what's stopping them, I always say, well, you're stopping you. It's you. It's all you. There's nothing outside. You have to stop blaming outside circumstances. There are the kids, and there's my husband, and there's my full-time job, and there's this, and there's that, and I was sick. And these are all just excuses that allow us to stop ourselves from doing what we say we want to do. So we have to take responsibility and really work with what's going on up here so that we can move forward. And what goes along with that is actually the need to change habits. what I find is a lot of aspiring writers talk a lot about writing, but they don't write.
Yeah.
And some of that is because they're too afraid. They see that as writer's block. I don't believe in that. I think there's just fear or lack of confidence. But maybe they get put off by the size of a project. They don't know how to chunk it all down and get clarity and be productive. But it's all, our current habits have only gotten us our current level of success. And so we have to change our habits. And often that starts here with, convincing ourselves we really need to make a change. And all that comes down to high performance. They need to master their psychology as well as their physiology and productivity and persuasion. And when they do all that, they start writing consistently and they publish their work.
There's probably a definition that comes along with being a high performance writer. What does that mean when you say that? So you are productive, but is there something more to that?
Yeah, there is. So I'll give you a definition. First, let me say that basically when you're a high performer, you have clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence, and you achieve those things: clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence. You achieve those actually by learning to master your psychology, your physiology, your productivity, your persuasion, and your purpose. And that's going to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. So there is maybe not a misconception, but people don't understand the difference between peak performance and high performance. So high performance means excelling and succeeding above standard norms consistently over the long term. So that's the actual definition. High performance means excelling and succeeding above standard norms consistently over the long term. So what does that mean, and what does that have to do, for instance, with peak performance? So we're talking about excelling and succeeding above standard norms, your own standard norms. So wherever you are, kind of like those habits, your success is relative to your habits you have right now. Yeah. So however, whatever your norm is, your normal way of operating as a writer or as a person, we want to actually to push that up, to level it up consistently into the future. So peak performance is about, it's easy to talk about athletes, but for writers, peak performance might happen, for instance, if you do National Novel Writing Month or my event, National Nonfiction Writing Month, and you're trying to write a book in a month, right? And so maybe you start out really strong in that first week and you're in the flow and everything's going really well. And then what happens is you go from that peak down into the valley. And you got to pick yourself back up and climb all the way back up to the top, right? And get back in the flow and all of that. So athletes have it the same way, although sometimes they need peak performance for an event like the Olympics, and then they need the valley to allow themselves to recuperate. But the idea with high performance is that you have this norm and you're leveling up, moving towards what I like to call the summit rather than the peak. And from that summit, you move to the next summit and the next. So you're always improving on this sort of standard you have. It's always getting higher and higher. It's leveling up. And, and this applies not just to writing, it applies to life, because high performance, everything you do to become a high performer affects every aspect of your life. Yeah. And when you do this, when you achieve these levels of clarity, energy, courage, productivity, and influence, and you're mastering your mind and your body and your productivity and your persuasion ability and your being on purpose, all these things, what happens is you get the feeling of full engagement and joy and confidence because you're consistently living from and into your full potential as well as into your purpose. And that's really what we call, sort of the high performance life. What I would just add is that I often talk about high performance as a superpower. It's like the writer's superpower or anyone's superpower because it allows you to move forward faster than you thought possible towards your goals and, towards your dream of becoming a writer and an author.
It sounds like a great sort of way to live every day. That's awesome.
It is. When I got involved, I actually, like I said, I've always been involved in personal development, but what happened was I went to an event with Brendan Burchard called High Performance Academy. And after I did that, I was so excited by all this information I had about high performance, but it was hard to keep it, to implement it on a consistent basis. As we know, it's so hard to change our habits.
Yeah.
And so I got a coach, and I actually did group coaching. There were a bunch of us wanted to be coached, and we got ourselves a coach, and we got coached. And it was partway through that coaching that I said, I'm going to become a coach. I'm going to become a certified high performance coach because I see the difference this is making in my life as a writer and as a person. It just, I mean, just amazing difference.
Sort of continuing on with high performance writer, are there steps that a new writer can take, like new habits, new routines or something to begin to intentionally bring change to their life?
Yeah, there are. So let me talk about some specific things, if that's okay, that they can do. That work? Yeah. Okay, so number one, I think for writers in particular, is that we want to not get sucked into email and social media first thing in the morning. Because I think for most of us, what happens is the first thing we do is we turn on our phones, right? And we look, do I have any email? What's happening on Facebook? And of course, we're told to be on social media. So it's a really easy excuse to say, well, I have to be on social media. I have to share my blog post. I have to respond and be engaging, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is don't get sucked into email and social media first thing in the morning, because actually, as Brendan Burchard likes to say, your email in general is just a convenient organizing system for other people's agendas. So what that means, if you get in, and then convenient organizing system for other people's agendas. So you may set up your schedule for the whole day, and then you open the email and go, oh, so-and-so wants this, and so-and-so wants that, and and I have to respond to this one. And for me, I actually do some customer service, right? So I have to get on there and see if anyone in any of my programs is having an issue. So if you're not doing customer service, you really don't need to get in there.
Yeah.
For customer service, maybe you do, but you can probably put it off. Yeah. So there's some studies that show that some of the most productive people in the world do not check their email or social media first thing in the morning. Wow. So that's one thing you can start doing.
Yeah.
The second step, I would say, is to come to your desk with energy. It's really easy to show up at your desk and say, I'm kind of tired and I'm just going to type like this, right? Which I find myself doing sometimes. I'm like, I'm typing, right? But that's not the same energy as sitting up like this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Typing. And so you have to come to the desk with energy. And so what you might need to do is to do some deep breathing before, or run up and down the stairs, or go out for a walk, or do something, and take regular breaks. You really shouldn't be working for more than about 50 minutes at a pop. And for 10 minutes, you should be breathing and getting a drink of water and moving your body. And that's actually going to keep you more in the flow and able to produce more work than the other way.
Okay.
The third thing I would say is to block time. So I mentioned, that we schedule stuff, but actually block your creative time so that, first thing in the morning you sit down and what you're working on is your stuff. And if you can't, if you have a full-time job or whatever, just find a time when you've actually blocked out that time to write. And remember that, writing is a habit, right? So we have to develop this habit of writing on a consistent basis. And the other thing I would do is to rate yourself on a daily basis on, how productive was I, how energetic was I, how on purpose was I, and develop a habit of journaling about that so that you can see if you're improving.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing I'd say to do is to decide who you want to be as a writer and as a person, and get really clear about that so that you can ask yourself continuously if you're living into that.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned, taking a drink of water and sort of energizing, but we really need to sleep enough. And so you really need to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night in order to really function at your best and to be the most productive. And you need to drink water and breathe because your brain and your body need it. But if you're not giving your brain enough oxygen, and if you're not drinking enough water, then you can't function very well. Yeah. So those are some of the steps. I think the only other thing I'd mention is to challenge yourself regularly. I think people get so much done during November, either during my nonfiction event or the fiction event, where you're writing a book in a month, is because they're challenged. They feel challenged to do it.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I think I would mention.
So you did a blog post on the 6 pillars of high performance, and so would you just talk about each pillar and how it relates specifically, to becoming a high performance writer?
Yes, for sure. So I mentioned clarity, energy, productivity, influence, and purpose. And these are created when you master these other pillars. Okay, so they're sort of embedded in there. So the first pillar is psychology. And basically, your mind is this powerful tool, but you have to know how to train it on the thoughts and beliefs that actually serve you. So we've talked about this a little bit, but if your mind is filled with a whole bunch of negative thoughts and limiting beliefs, you're going to have a really difficult time. Ooh, sorry. You're going to have a really difficult time moving forward, because you're going to keep telling yourself things that stop you, right? So you have to get past these limiting beliefs and these and negative thoughts, and help your mind support your efforts to succeed as a writer. And so some of that comes with clarity and courage, and we develop that actually as we begin to develop this mastery over our psychology, over our mind. So the second pillar is physiology. Basically, how you treat your body affects every area of your performance, including your ability to write. So if you don't feel strong and energetic and flexible and have endurance and stamina, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do, especially if you're working a full-time job and taking care of kids and then sitting down to write, right? So, which is for a lot of writers is the case. So it's interesting in my group coaching for writers. I have a couple brain scientists right now, and I was surprised. Yeah, it was a little intimidating, and but I was really surprised when we did the section on mastering your physiology and on energy. They came away with so much information. Like, they came back a week later and they said, "Oh my God, this changed everything for me," because it is this ability to bring energy to everything you do. And when you exercise and you eat a healthy diet and you make sleep a priority and you're doing all these things so you function at your best, your brain and your body can do the tasks required of them, and you show up with just with different energy. And everything in the universe is energetic, right? It's all energy. We're all giving off energy and we're taking in energy. And so it's not even just about the kind of energy we think of, like, I'm laying back like this, or I'm up and I'm have a lot of energy. It's also just the energy you exude as a person, and you need to be aware of that. Yeah. Okay, so the next pillar is productivity, and we all want to be more productive. We can make more money if we're more productive. We can churn out more work, right? I mean, everybody wants to write more.
Yes.
You can do that when you actually have mastered your mind, because you can focus. Right? You have more ability to focus your attention where you need to place it. And also you can be more productive when you have the energy, as I already mentioned. So one of the things that I always like to talk about when I talk about this pillar of productivity, mastering your productivity, is the idea that we can actually manage our time. So you only have 24 hours in a day. That's all you have. You can't manage that. Like, you can't change it. You can manage your schedule, right? The how you use the time that you have, and then you can manage your attention in that time. So when you block out time for writing, you have to manage your attention. You have to learn how to focus and be present in the moment so that you can actually write more. That is when productivity happens. So basically, your ability to serve your readers in a larger way comes from the ability to be productive. And so for me, that's a lot about having clarity and having focus.
Yeah.
Okay, next pillar is persuasion. A lot of people think about persuasion as like the used car salesman, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to persuade. You are, as an author, trying to persuade people to buy something. You're trying to get them to buy your books or your programs or services, right? But we're talking about influence and persuasion in a positive sense. you want to develop that know, like, trust factor that's always talked about when it comes to building platform. But you want to see yourself as a positive role model. You want to be able to persuade people because you are an influencer in their life. You have to learn how to be that, so that you can inspire other people to change or to buy your books or to go on the journey that you're taking them on, whatever it is. And so you need these persuasive skills to land writing assignments and interviews. Like, you had to persuade me to a certain extent to be here today, right?
And I'm so glad you said yes.
You did a really good job. So, we also need testimonials, blurbs, and forwards for our books, and all these different things. And to help you build your platform, to sell books, to get yourself to do what you need to do, you need persuasive abilities. You need to master influence, and even to help to get yourself to write daily. So it's not just about influencing others, it's about influencing yourself.
Yes.
Right? If you can't influence yourself to change your habits so that you write consistently, that you show up with energy, all these different things, then you're going to have a hard time influencing anyone to buy your books because, you haven't mastered this, right?
Yeah.
So we really need to master persuasion. The next one is purpose, mastery of purpose. And this goes back to your big why. Your passion drives you forward to achieve your writing goals and dreams. And high performers revolve all their actions and decisions around fulfilling their purpose. And I like to talk about staying on purpose, because when you know what your purpose is, what you want to accomplish, what your big why is for why you write, you're going to, and you can stay on that, right, all the time, you're going to move closer to achieving your goal of becoming a successful writer. And you're going to achieve your potential as well as fulfill your purpose. So I think you need to ask yourself why you feel compelled to write your books, and whether that purpose is, whether you have a personal purpose or your books have the same purpose, and when you can have this purpose as your underlying reason for everything you do, you're going to be emotionally tied to your work. And for a lot of writers who talk about, I want to be a writer, I want to be an author, and they're not doing it, the problem is that they don't have a big why. They're not tied into that emotionally.
Okay. Yeah. Does that work also for fiction writers, Nina?
So I have a novel in a drawer that needs a little help.
How exciting.
I do. Yes, one, but it needs a little help. But one day it'll be published. In any case, I won a pitch contest at the San Francisco Writers Conference for that book because it had a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I know the storyline is good. I write nonfiction, so the writing needs a little help. But I was told to focus on the benefit that my book would provide to the readers when I pitched it.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about what do I want the reader to get out of this book, closer I got to a winning pitch. And that benefit to the reader, most novelists aren't thinking about that. They just want to tell a good story. Yeah. But most stories have a benefit. And if you start looking at the back cover of most novels, you're going to see that somewhere in there it's going to say the character learns, or the character transforms, or there's something happens, right? That can be a purpose. But there are writers who write inspirational novels. Yeah. And their purpose is to inspire, right? Yeah. So I think you can have a purpose for fiction, for sure. Awesome. And so just quickly, the last pillar is to master your presence. And basically, presence is exactly what it sounds like, being present in the moment. We talk a lot about mindfulness these days. But you just have to be conscious, aware, interested, focused in the moment in order to get the results you're really wanting. If you're in the past or in the future, then how are you going to focus right now on what you need to accomplish as a writer? So, I think that's really the underlying purpose, and purpose and presence underlie the mastery of psychology, physiology, productivity, and influence. So that's it.
That is super helpful. I mean, there's so much there, really. Which explains why you have a whole, coaching program around that, because you have to go, more into depth. So that's so great.
Well, and if you take Performance Academy, it's 4 days. 4 days of getting all this information. So I'm giving you the very concise, maybe concise edition of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. it's kind of like a teaser though, because then we realize really what we need to do, right, to become high performance writers. So is it important then for writers to have some way of evaluating, I guess, where they've been, or I guess to ask themselves and write down their reasons? So for instance, when they haven't made their goal, like say they wanted to finish a book at a certain date and they didn't make their goal, is it important for them to evaluate, well, why didn't this happen?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, what I recommend is that when you set goals, to ask yourself at that time what challenges might come up.
Oh, that's
and plan
good.
to overcome them.
Yeah.
So for sure, you've probably heard the saying, "Success leaves clues," right?
Yes.
So we always want to look at our successes to see why we succeeded, but it's the same when we fail. We want to look at that because failure leaves clues.
Yeah.
So when you write a goal for yourself, you want to actually say, what could get in the way of me achieving this goal based on what I know about my success rate and my failure rate and what typically hangs me up. What can I do to plan for that? And that's a lot like athletes who, like a marathon runner who thinks about the middle of the race, right? When they feel like they want to quit because their lungs are burning, their legs are burning, they're like, this is hard, I can't make it to the end. And their mind starts going around in those negative circles. I can't do this, it's too hard. I'll never make it. I'm going to lose, let alone not finish. And so we need to plan for that so that we know what to do in that moment so we can change that and move on to the end. So, I really think that that's a big thing that we need to do. And one of the things to help you get over those challenges or two things, is actually to use visualization and affirmations, which I wrote a lot about in my newest book, Creative Visualization for Writers. And it's the same kind of things that like a marathon runner is going to do. They're going to visualize that tough point, and they're going to visualize themselves getting over it and how they get over it. And by the more they visualize it over and over again and affirm, I can do it, I know I can make it to the end of the race, I know I can win, all these things, it's going to help boost their confidence and give them the ability to get over the finish line.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's funny that you said about visualization because I felt inspired. So.
Oh, look at that! I don't even have to
So I got your book, and it's just there's so much in there that's so helpful. So thank you for writing it.
Oh, my pleasure. That was a fun book to write.
So it's just I realized that that's been kind of the thing, lacking, I think, for my own writing. And I realized, because I went quite far in piano and voice, right? And I realized the whole daily practice thing, because I did hours and hours, right? But for some reason, I've had a tough time switching that over to writing. And so, but your book has really helped. I just wanted to say that.
Really appreciate that. I hope people will get a copy, because I think that it teaches you skills not just for writing, kind of like high performance. It's not just for writing. There's skills that if you learn how to do the goal setting and the self-evaluation, which is all the personal development stuff, and you learn how to focus your mind on the positive, all those things. I just think it makes a huge difference in every area of your life.
Yeah, it's already changing how I'm thinking about as I go through each day, right? So it's really good.
Good.
Yeah.
Wow.
So is it helpful, would you say, for especially first-time writers to be part of a coaching program that really challenges them and inspires and motivates them to reach their goals? And if so, why would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I've been coached, and of course I am a coach, so I'm a little biased, but being that I have been in some classes and coaching programs as well, I would say yes, that it's definitely a good thing for both new and experienced writers.
Yeah.
It does, as you said, it challenges and inspires them. We tend to avoid challenges.
Yeah.
Our ego gets going and says, stay safe, stay just the way you are. You don't need to do anything differently. And so when you're in this group, or when you're working with a coach, even one-on-one, you you're more apt to take on the challenge. That's why National Novel Writing Month is so successful, because everyone's doing it at the same time and you have this group energy. But typically we also have no accountability system set up for ourselves. And so when you're working with a coach or even in a group coaching program, you suddenly have more accountability than you did before. Even if you're not required to turn anything in, every week or whatever, you're still coming back to the group and people are having a conversation and, it becomes apparent whether you're doing anything, right? And sometimes investing the money, to be honest, I hate to say this, but sometimes investing the money makes us do it. Whereas when we haven't invested any, we got no skin in the game, we're less likely to do it.
Yeah.
And there's an energy that happens in coaching, both one-on-one and in a group. I mean, it's different one-on-one than in a group, but there's an energy that happens that feeds your ability to level up. So I do think it's really a good thing for almost anyone.
Yeah.
And if you ask some of the most successful writers or business people, entrepreneurs, singers, doesn't really matter, athletes, they're all going to tell you they have a coach and that they're actually investing in themselves via coaching to help them not only develop their skill level, but bring up their personal development. Most of them are actually investing a hell of a lot of money in personal development.
Yeah.
Because they know that's the foundational element to success.
That totally makes sense to me. The mindset thing is huge, right?
Yeah.
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 That's important.
And sometimes all you need is a tiny little adjustment. I can't remember who was, I think it's Tony Robbins tells the story of going to learn how to play golf. Yeah. And he gets out there and he's hitting all the balls and everything's going great. And he comes back the next week and he can't do anything. And the guy, says, all it is this 5 millimeter shift in your hand and how you're holding that club. And so I love that example from Tony, because what it's basically saying is sometimes all we need is a tiny shift in our mindset or in how we're doing something. And it often takes someone else to show us how to do that.
Yeah. And talking about your high performance coaching for writers, do you coach only nonfiction, or do you coach fiction too? Fiction writers, I mean.
So for the high performance writing program, so for anyone listening, I have a program called High Performance Writer Group Coaching. And in that program, I have people writing all kinds of things.
Oh, okay.
And I have another program too that's an accountability program called the Inspired Writing Results Group, and that's novelists and nonfiction. So, but going back to the high performance, the thing is, high performance applies to anyone. Yeah. And that group, what everyone has to know is that is not focused on writing. It's not about skill.
Yeah.
It's not about building platform. It's about becoming a high performer so that you can succeed as a writer and in life. So it doesn't matter what you're writing.
Yeah.
The people come in, everyone is a writer. They're all struggling with the same basic issues. How do I get more, become more productive? How do I develop the courage to put my work out into the world? I really need a blog, but I haven't done it. It's not, and it doesn't matter what kind of writing you're doing. You're going to be struggling with the same mindset issues, the same physiology issues, the same productivity issues, the same persuasive issues. We all still need to build platform, and we first need to persuade ourselves to do things. And so it doesn't really matter what you write.
Yeah.
You could just be a blogger. It would work.
Just kind of as we sort of come to the end of our chat, but what would you say is the best advice that you have been given that has helped you the most, or maybe something that you wish someone had told you when you first started out wanting to be a writer?
So this has little to do with high performance. It has more to do maybe with business.
Okay.
And that is not to just write a book, to write a marketable book. I would probably tack on to that also to write a book that helps you fulfill your purpose.
Yeah.
But so the idea behind that answer, or to elaborate on that answer, is I've written a lot in my book, The Author Training Manual, and also on How to Blog a Book, about business plans for books. I think that a lot of people get an idea for a book and they just sit down and start to write. And they don't think about whether this book is marketable, whether people will buy it.
Yeah.
And then they end up with a book that they haven't planned out well, and so it needs lots of editing and revision because they didn't go through this planning process. And and they end up with a book that doesn't sell, and then they're heartbroken.
Yeah.
And so I think we really have to focus on this idea that we want to write a book that will sell, because otherwise we're not making that positive and meaningful impact with our words. We're not affecting anyone if our books don't sell.
Yeah.
So you have to come back to that. And I think that's a mindset issue too. A lot of people just think they just want to write their book. They're creative. They're not business people. Why should you have a business plan? And they don't realize that writing and publishing is a business.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's also a switching to becoming an author entrepreneur.
And then that's a mindset thing too, right?
Yeah.
Because you really have to change your mindset about that and say, well, if I'm going to be a successful writer, then I have to learn how to be a successful writer entrepreneur.
Yeah, really good. That's great. Would you just share then, Nina, like new books, resources, or coaching programs that you have on the go right now? And then, where can people that are listening, where can they find you online?
Awesome. Thank you. I'd be happy to. So being that we had all this conversation about high performance, I've already mentioned it, but I do have my high performance writer group coaching program. So that is basically at a much, much reduced rate so that it's affordable to writers for them to do high performance coaching with me. Everybody can find it at, you can find me and everything I do at ninaamir.com. So that's NINAAMIR.com. But you can find the high performance writer group coaching program at ninaamir.com/HP, like high performance, HP writer group. And so there's that, but you can find all of this at ninaamir.com. So that's a big one, and I am enrolling that right now. My next session, I actually have 2 sessions running in April, and so I'd love to have some of your listeners join up and become high-performing writers. So I run that every 3 months. So the next session is in April, and then 3 months later, and 3 months later.
Okay.
For anyone who writes nonfiction who's listening, I have my Nonfiction Writers University. And that's, I don't want to waste a lot of time going into what that is exactly, but if you would like to do some coaching with me, there's group coaching in there. There's an event every month where I interview someone like you're interviewing me. And there's a challenge every month to keep people challenged. And there's extra training and I think it's over 3 years worth of material in there at this point. So it's a big, huge university to help educate you in becoming a nonfiction writer. As for my books, you can just go to booksbyninaamir.com. As you pointed out, the newest book is The Creative Visualization for Writers, but you can find How to Blog a Book and the Author Training Manual and all my ebooks just by going to booksbyninaamir.com. So I think those are the big things, but I mean, I have tons of stuff on my site. And of course, people can do one-on-one coaching with me as an author coach. I do author coaching, which is personalized coaching. And then I do author training, which is a curriculum based on the author training manual. So if somebody's new to publishing, that's a great way to really get trained on what it takes to succeed as an author. And also to start building your business plan for your book. Basically, we go through every section required to build a business plan for your book so you're ready to write.
Yeah.
What else? And then I do blog coaching and book coaching. And I do one-on-one high performance coaching as well. And I think that's enough to talk about for now. I think there's lots. Go to ninaamir.com. I mean, I also have 3-4 different blogs, and you can find them all at ninaamir.com.
Okay. Wow. You definitely are a high performance writer because you're just doing so much. So that's inspiring. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
Thanks so much, Nina, for just taking the time today just to chat, and appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, really. And this is stuff I love. I love talking about writing and publishing, but I'm really, really passionate about personal development. And so I really am thrilled that you gave me the opportunity to talk about high performance to writers, because I think it really is the superpower. It's the secret sauce that everybody needs. So thank you. I really am honored, and it was a pleasure.
Oh, well, thanks, Nina. It's great.